One of my favorite TV shows reminds us that it's a jungle out there and there's a lot to be scared of in the world. Can a movie about ducks help us face our fears? Hi, you're watching This, That and Theology, equipping you to see your worldview in the world around you. It's not uncommon for a lot of family movies to come out during Christmas time, as families with kids that are out of school looking for something to do often go to the movie theater. I went on opening day for Migration, and the theater was packed with kids, parents, and grandparents hoping to spend some time with a film that might be entertaining and may actually teach something good. Migration follows a group of mallard ducks who live in a secluded pond somewhere in the middle of nowhere. In the opening montage of the film, you see the family really enjoying each other and enjoying the space in safety. Even though there's an initial story that talks about all the dangers that could happen if they leave the safety of the pond, at least for this mallard family, things are going well. All of that changes when a group of ducks that are migrating down to Jamaica stop at this idyllic little pond. Now, both the kids and the wife, Pam, are interested in possibly going and seeing a little bit of the world. At first, Mac is really hesitant to do it because he knows that there are dangerous things out in the world. Ultimately, Dad agrees to go on the migration, and not unlike family car rides, all of a sudden the family of four and crazy Uncle Dan are heading south to Jamaica. Along the way, they make some unexpected friends and perhaps some predictable enemies. Over the thousands of miles of their journey from their pond to Jamaica, the entire family grows and changes. Not a single one of them is left exactly the way they were before. At the end of the film, they make it to their island paradise, but I won't ruin the story on how they get there. There have been several films that have come out in this latter part of the year, which have been refreshingly clear of things that you might not want to see. For instance, this film is remarkably free of any foul language, well, other than the fact that the birds are talking. And there's almost no sexuality. There's a little bit of a young romance between one of the kids and one of the migrating ducks, and you see a healthy romantic bond between the mom and the dad duck, between Mac and Pam. In fact, one of the things I like the most about this film is the way they portray the family. It's clear that they all love each other. They still bicker and fight as siblings. There are still parts that the mom gets frustrated over the dad with, and that the dad gets exasperated with over the mom. But all in all, this is a healthy representation of what a family should look like, both as they go through times of fun and growing at home, and as they face the challenges along the way of their journey. Even more encouraging is the fact that each family member encourages another one to continue to grow. In fact, there's a lot of growth happening in this film. Dad becomes more brave. The son becomes more responsible and understands what it means to grow into an adult. The little girl just flat out grows up a little bit, and mom has to face what it's like to be overwhelmed with a challenge ahead of them. In fact, as we're looking at the worldview analysis for this film, we do see that a lot of that has to do with the fact that every character actually changes. And maybe it's because I'm a dad myself, but I definitely identified with Mac in this film. I felt like this film really was about Mac and his personal journey. It's clear from the first few minutes of this film that Mac is afraid of a lot of things, and most of the things he's afraid of are real. It's not like he's coming up with imaginary monsters. All the things that he talks about being afraid of are things that really are threats to the duck kind. But Mac is controlled by his fear. It keeps him from migrating, even though all the other ducks seem to be doing it. It makes his storytelling for the kids to be ones where the kids doing something wrong ends up and they die. Instead of mom and dad rescuing them, the consequence of breaking outside of the rules and the safe areas is they get eaten by herons. And Mac being controlled by his fears is affecting the rest of this family. His daughter is adopting some of the very same fears that he has himself. His son is getting more and more frustrated because he sees the world is bigger than what he's allowed to be interacting with, and yet his dad's fear is keeping him grounded. Even his wife is feeling somewhat limited by Mac's fears. In fact, at one point she says, "I don't want to miss out on what the world has because you're afraid." Again, the thing I like about this is it never comes in a disrespect or a way that is unloving towards her husband. But it's even Mac's own fear that causes him to leave. He has an interaction with Uncle Dan when he sees how Uncle Dan has lived, and Mac becomes afraid that he could turn into Uncle Dan, And so he gathers up the family and off they go on their migration. Now, I think it's important to note that Mac is actually afraid of real things. These aren't imagined things. They may be blown a little out of proportion, but the things that Mac is concerned about, the things that he's afraid of, are actually things you should be concerned of, especially if you're a mallard duck. However, as the film progresses, Mac is facing those fears, and more he overcomes them, partially because of his love for his family, even if he doesn't necessarily see it right away. You see that inside of Mac, who at the beginning of the film you think is just afraid, is a bird of great courage. In fact, as one of the characters, Delroy, says, "You knew the danger, and you did it anyway. What else would you call it other than bravery?" We cheer along with this mallard family because even though they're in dangerous situations, even though you see the things that Mac are afraid of are real, you see that there's benefit in facing your fears and overcoming them. And that's right in line with a biblical worldview. As we look throughout Scripture, we see time and time again that God tells his people to do not fear. Especially here around Christmas time, every time the angels showed up to give good news about Jesus coming, it seemed that it was started with, "Do not fear." The Bible has a lot to say about our fear and how we should deal with it. The psalmist wrote in Psalm 23, verse 4, that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because your rod and your staff, the means by which the shepherd controls his sheep, comfort him. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, we see that God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of boldness, of love, of self-control, not of one controlled by fear. In Deuteronomy 31, God tells his people to have courage and do not fear, for the Lord goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. And in John chapter 14, as Jesus is speaking to his disciples, "Peace I leave you, my peace I give you, and I don't give as the world gives. Let not your hearts be troubled, and be not afraid." There are a lot of things that we really should at least be concerned with, even if we're not controlled by fear. We can face those things because the creator of the universe says that he stands with us. Migration's worldview reminds us that we shouldn't be controlled by fear, even if it's things that are legitimately something that we should be afraid of. We should have a healthy dose of fear, for instance, when we start driving on the highway. But we can't be controlled by our fear, just as the mallards had to learn that they need to face their fear, overcome it, because there's great benefit in doing so. Think of all the things that they could have missed out, including the tropical paradise in Jamaica, if they had let their fear control them. And from a biblical worldview, we know that the reason we can face our fears, the reason that we're not controlled by the things that may be legitimately dangerous, is that God stands with us and tells us not to be afraid, because he is our strength and our shield. Every time you watch a movie, you can be sure that there is a worldview, there is messaging that is part of the story. And here at This, That, and Theology, we'll help you see it. If this video has been helpful, make sure you like and subscribe, maybe even share it. And if there's something about this video or migration that really spoke to you, go ahead and leave that in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on This, That, and Theology.
We are completely lost. We're trying to get to Jamaica.
Come on, lovebirds. It's this way.
Whoa, we are not flying through this crazy death trap of a city.
Just stick close to me, and everything will be all right. I'm okay. Yeah, no, I'm okay. We can do this. Ha-ha! You missed, bud. Maybe don't stick too close.
Keep on